Hi everyone, Michelle here from michellesmidheaven.com, and today I would like to talk about what I would call the secrets that are hidden in plain sight in the zodiac. Because, of course, there is an order of the zodiac signs, there is a structure in the horoscope wheel, and at the time of our birth, all of the signs fall into certain areas of the horoscope. So that means that we have connections there that we can look into. And apart from the sun and the moon, all of the planets, each planet actually governs two signs. And these two signs in different areas of the chart are already going to tell us a lot about a person. And that's what I want to look into today. So we are first going to look at what is the rising sign, which planet is ruling the rising sign, and what other sign is this planet ruling? And that's going to tell us something extra about you. And this is one of the things that I really love about astrology is that you can sit down and simply think about things and make these connections. And this is what really helps train the astrology muscle. And this is where you can come up with really nice new insights. And so I hope to inspire you today. Let's start, for example, with Aries rising. Okay, for an Aries rising, we know that Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars is fiercely independent and thrives and depends on his individual willpower and instincts to turn impulses and ambitions into reality. It's essential for someone with Aries rising to do things in their own unique way. Now, in every Aries rising chart, Scorpio falls into the eighth house, right? So this area of the chart becomes like a battleground for Mars, the warrior god. We're looking at it from a martial perspective, right? So it's a battleground. And by the way, we can all look at the houses in our charts that are ruled by Mars, are areas in our lives where we live out to participate in some kind of struggle or conflict, for good or for bad, because it can be a very positive thing to have the courage to fight for something you care about, right? So for an Aries rising, it's the noble fight, striving to assert oneself. And connected to Mars's other sign, Scorpio, in the eighth house, there's another battleground that is traditionally associated with social esteem and other people's needs and expectations, because it is a house of shared resources. It's a house of commitment, emotional intimacy as well, the shared psychological baggage we have with other people. And in general, in the eighth house, we oftentimes see themes of codependency play out. So, planets in the eighth house are sometimes held hostage by obligations, emotional enmeshment, or karmic contracts. So, part of an Aries rising person's mission is to break or sever those eighth house commitments, or instead, actually commit to telling other people what to do, or to coach others, and so on. And that'll be relatively easy to do if Mars is in a strong position in the chart. And Mars might also receive some assistance or be hindered, depending on which planets are in the eighth house and what planets Mars is aspecting, and so on. I won't get too deep in this today, but I hope you get the picture of how you could contemplate the connection between the rising sign and the location of the other sign ruled by your first house ruler. And we can take it a little further even, because when Mars rules those topics, you can bet Aries rising people develop a finely tuned instinctual radar for any potential restraining commitments, as a Mars ruled person would want to protect their freedom and independence. And again, as an assertive god of action, Mars tends to fight and rebel against any signs of codependence. There's a deeper level to this, isn't there? Because it makes sense that a person who strives to be true to one's own willpower, that they have a good eye for the things that might threaten that mission. And the same goes for Scorpio rising people. Look where Aries lands in the Scorpio rising chart. In the sixth house of public enemies. So again, charts that are ruled by Mars are at the same time very much focused on other people because both the sixth and the eighth house are centered around the seventh house of relationships, positive and negative relationships. The seventh house is the house where we meet the great other, the unknown other individuals we encounter on our path. And it makes so much sense because Mars is a nocturnal planet. Mars belongs to the nighttime sect. And nocturnal planets are very much focused on other people. In Mars's case, there's a focus on other people in the sense that a Mars ruled person is protecting their independence against intruders, so to speak, by instinctively feeling and analyzing or researching what others are up to. And this is why so many Mars ruled people are actually very good at things like psychology or coaching and problem solving and so on. They really can pinpoint the things that people are struggling with, and they dig or probe very deeply to look for potential threats against their own sovereignty. So the Scorpio rising is a true survivor, absolutely willing and ready to do whatever is necessary to defend himself, even using violence and sacrifice, themes which are associated, of course, with the sixth house. So I hope that you can see how this very simple technique can give you some extra insight into your rising sign. Now, if we look at another nocturnal planet, Venus, which is Mars's counterpart, as their signs oppose one another, we get an identical structure, or a mirror, if you will. A Taurus rising person is ruled by Venus, and Venus's other sign is Libra, which happens to fall in the sixth house. So here's that mirroring going on. But this time, it's Venus who is in charge, and she'll be handling things differently compared to Mars. Since Venus prefers partnership and collaboration over independence, the sixth house now tends to become a place where the native is able to offer Venusian assistance to others, often coming from a place where the native endured some hardship, actually. And sometimes it could even involve a kind of sacrifice in the sense that a Venus ruled person puts a lot of sixth house effort, a lot of work into creating or upholding relationships with others. And how that will play out, of course, depends on how Venus is doing in the natal chart. For a Libra rising person, on the other hand, Venus's other home sign, Taurus, now falls into the eighth house. And unlike an Aries rising individual who would approach the first house, eighth house combination from a place of assertiveness and independence, Venus now has a different take on it, which makes the native care more deeply about how others perceive them. The involvement with other people is so strong here that a Libra rising person might become so enmeshed that there's a danger of losing one's own identity in the process. How things are likely to turn out depends on where Venus is in the chart and if there are any planets in the eighth house, of course. But basically, both Mars and Venus are nocturnal planets, meaning they're relational planets. So relationships of any kind are actually shaping the character of people with rising signs ruled by Venus or Mars in a very significant way, as we can see through this method. And Mars being a relationship planet might sound strange, but think of how Mars is an individualist precisely because he compares himself with others. He needs to break free and compete with other people. He has things to prove, enemies to fight against, and so on. And Mars can get pretty obsessed with others as well. Now, it's a different story for Mercury, who is the ruler of Gemini and Virgo. Remember, Mercury can be of a double nature. He can be either diurnal or nocturnal, and that depends on Mercury's position in relation to the Sun. And remember, Mercury is a psychopomp, a messenger between two worlds. Mercury can travel very fast from the underworld to the upper world. He's a messenger between what's below and what's above. That's why Mercury represents our ability to connect with the divine, and Mercury represents man. And in the ancient joy scheme of the planets, Mercury has its joy in the first house. So there is something about human beings as embodied souls that describes our duality, but also our connection with both worlds, the spirit world and the material world. And I think this is totally supported by the structure of the zodiac when we look at the Gemini rising chart, which has Mercury's other sign, Virgo, in the fourth house, which is the subterranean place. And this is where the wealth and the richness of the underworld occurs and where occult secrets were buried. And this is certainly something that Mercury, our messenger and psychopomp, can excavate. So a Gemini rising person is our psychopomp that can bring ideas from that other world, from spirit, or from that subterranean place where the dead reside, where the gods reside as well. Mercury brings these messages and ideas into our world, and we can see him bringing this into the world as Virgo rising, Mercury's other sign of Gemini, then appears at the top of the chart in the 10th house. And we also have a similar format going on for Mercury's counterpart, Jupiter. Jupiter is also connecting the 4th and the 10th house. A Sagittarius rising person will have Pisces in the 4th house, which is a connection with the afterlife or the other world. That mystical place that Jupiter, just like Mercury, has access to. Well, for Mercury, it's about investigating and experimenting, but for Jupiter, on the other hand, it's going to be about finding that inner faith that sees the big picture, that has this truth inside, that really has a good grasp of the cosmic order of things, and how that is then reflected into the material world. Because when we see Pisces rising, we're going to have Sagittarius in the 10th house. This is more about establishing law and order in the world based on the 4th house cosmic order. And where Mercury researches and examines and brings new ideas into the world and implements new perspectives, and in my humble opinion, also can influence the spirit world through magic, for example, which is definitely a mercurial function. Jupiter now is more about bringing the wisdom of the 4th house lineage of the ancestors and the teachings to bring that to the world. Okay, so now let's take a look at what Saturn might reveal about the signs of Capricorn and Aquarius as rising signs. Now, this is interesting because these signs are next to one another and they're naturally placed in an aversion, as we call it. They're together but averse, which already tells us something about Saturn itself. But let's just take a look at the Capricorn rising chart first, which always has Aquarius in the 2nd house. Now, the 2nd house has to do with ways in which we support ourselves as we're living this life in a physical body that has certain needs. We have to take care of the material side of things. The physical body needs to be sustained with food, nourishment, which belongs to the 2nd house. And of course, in this world, we need money to sustain and protect the physical body with clothes and energy. So you can see that the 2nd house is really a place of necessity, and this already is telling us so much about Saturn, who is very aware of that. Saturn is aware of the responsibility that we all have when coming into this world. It's not all about having fun and enjoying the human experience here. There are dangers connected to it. And according to Saturn, we better make sure that we have a decent foundation so that we can function in this world. And it is Saturn who takes that responsibility. When we put Aquarius in the 1st house, Saturn's other sign, Capricorn, moves to the 12th house. And the 12th house happens to be the place where Saturn has his joy. The 12th house is a place of isolation, of alienation, because there is this deep intuitive knowing that we do not entirely belong to this world. The 12th house is also a place of hidden things, of secrets, and of the negative effects of living in this strange world that we're all thrown into. We can get sick, for example, or suffering pain. That's also a 12th house topic, right? It's an inevitable part of life in the physical world. And again, it's pointing to Saturn's association with suffering. See how much this simple technique can lead to more insights into the planets themselves. Coming back to the fact that Capricorn and Aquarius are in an inversion, placed right next to one another, we know, for example, that planets that are in an inversion to one another cannot see one another. They cannot make aspects to planets that are in the next sign to them. So, this is also telling us some things about Saturn, isn't it? Because Saturn rules both Capricorn and Aquarius. It makes me think of a shadow side or a blind spot. But here's the thing. Because Saturn rules both of them, he does have access to what is otherwise hidden. It's just going to take some effort. And it makes sense that Saturn, as the last planet that's still visible with the naked eye, he's the gatekeeper of the unseen hidden world, the secrets that are behind the veil that Saturn is protecting. Saturn, who is ruling the boundaries between these two signs, is telling us that the 12th house is a place where we can access the unseen. It's part of Saturn's function. I thought that was interesting because it's a well-known fact that people who have mystical experiences oftentimes went through a stage in their life where they experienced severe trauma. And that's a very 12th housey Saturnian theme, is the idea actually that suffering ultimately leads to wisdom, and that that wisdom is something that we can use to navigate this difficult world. So that would be our typical first house, 12th house connection, and it really sounds very Saturnian, doesn't it? Okay, so now we went through all of the planets that rule two signs. So what's left is the sun and the moon. The moon rules Cancer, the sun rules Leo. So isn't there any connection we can make here? I think there is, because when I was looking into this, I was reminded actually of an old Zoroastrian theory that actually says that the sun and the moon have this sort of dual rulership going on over Cancer and Leo. Plus, we also know that the luminaries are the counterparts of Saturn, right? Because Cancer and Leo are opposing Capricorn and Aquarius. The sun and the moon actually are quintessential principles. They are the principles of the one and the many that make creation possible. So this is why I think Cancer and Leo schemes of the horoscope wheel can give us insight into human existence and creation itself. In fact, the Cancer rising chart copies the ancient Thema Mundi chart, which is a symbolic representation of the birth of the cosmos. When Cancer rises, Leo falls into the second house. Cancer is thought of as the gateway of man. So the moon is very much associated with our coming into this world, into your body. And guess what? The second house is again everything that supports the body. So with Leo there, ruled by the sun, the order of the zodiac might be telling us that matter, the first house of the soul coming into physical being, is supported or needs to be supported by spirit, by the sun. So it's almost as if we're getting a more spiritual, a more cosmic message when we're looking at the interplay between the sun and the moon or Cancer and Leo. On a more practical level, Cancer rising people seem to have a better memory of the place of the oneness they used to belong to. So they're always looking for their true home in the broadest sense of the word. Now, for the Leo rising, we have the sign of Cancer falling into the 12th house, that hidden place again. Ruled by the sun, which is spirit, and now the moon, traditionally associated with memory. Again, it's perhaps about the memory of where we truly belong. That awareness is hidden, and now the sun, or the Leo rising person, ruled by the sun, has to find their way in life. And interestingly enough, this has given me more insight into Leo rising charts because you'd think a Leo rising person radiates this solar self-confidence and whatnot. But on the contrary, what I often see is that at least a great part of Leo rising people have lost themselves and really have to find out who they really are. That's definitely a 12th house theme, the sense of having lost your path. So, Leo rising people need to find their true identity and express that in an unfiltered way. And part of their path is to access and retrieve the 12th house memories guarded by the moon. And again, how easy or how difficult it is going to be for the native to find their path in life, and how will our experiences shape our first house character and so on. That's, of course, where we start looking at the connections between the planets. But I wanted to show you today that we can already glean a lot of information by just looking at the structure of the zodiac for each rising sign. And of course, there is much more information that we can glean from all this. For example, the combinations that I've just made with the rising sign and then looking at the other sign, we notice that there are no harmonious aspects between the signs. There are no sextiles or no trines between the signs that are ruled by the same planets. Okay, so maybe on a more philosophical level, that could underline all of the strife and all of the challenges that we encounter uh, throughout our lifetime here on Earth in this strange experience that we're all having. And of course, as an astrologer, I think astrology is truly endless when we contemplate these kinds of schemes and structures. And there is so much to discover there. It's truly, it has no bounds whatsoever. So, okay, this is it for today. But if you like this content, please consider taking one of my workshops. My next workshop is up very soon. By the end of the month, we're going to look into transits, how to use transits effectively. I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide. We're going to practice together. So, if you're interested, go to my website, michellesmidheaven.com, to sign up. And if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. And also go to my website, michellesmidheaven.com, to subscribe to my newsletter, where you will find out about more workshops because there's a lot coming up this year for you. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Until next time.